Welcome to the third episode of Performance Anxiety Dialogue Podcast. My name is Flippa, and this is the third part of a 5-part series about how performance anxiety has an effect on athletes. In today's episode, we will focus on how performance anxiety is apparent in team sports. We will interview athletes who themselves play team sports and hear their experience with mental health within their team and sport. Next week, we will focus on individual sports, but I hope you will enjoy this episode first. Remember that this podcast is in no way an official diagnosis, but rather a safe space for athletes at any age or any level to receive support. So some examples of team sports are soccer, softball, basketball, volleyball, and all of these sports require a group of people working together towards a common goal. In team sports especially, it is really important that the group works well together, but are also open about any issues they might be having, as this could have a large impact on their peers' performance as well. I think that in team sports especially, most of the time the main focus is put towards making each player the best of their ability. Anyone would probably agree that a team of all professional players would be a team where only one is professional. However, you have to focus on the team as a whole. And sometimes it gets even more difficult having a team of 20 athletes to be able to provide each one of them with the mental health help which they each require. I interviewed Jenny Edner, who is a sports psychologist, and I quote, "In teams, it is very complex because there are a lot of individuals. So the best would be to work individually with everyone because they might have different situations where they get nervous. And then after, as a group, get educated about the stress behavior and how we affect each other when we get nervous in individual situations. We read behavior, so if your friend gets stressed, you also could become stressed." This is a very important note with which Jenny makes, that we read each other's behavior. You might have been in a situation where one of your teammates gets very stressed. They have gotten some extra pressure from your coach to make this one goal. And then it's really likely to trigger stress feelings for you as well because we read behavior. Think of it like you're with your friends and one of them began walking to the left. You would probably very quickly begin to follow them towards the left as well, not to be left behind. This idea is very similar to reading each other's emotions, which is why each team should be given talks about stress management so that one person doesn't get overly stressed in a certain situation to lead the rest to also feel this way. And I think it's very important to be able to recognize these patterns early on and work through them as fast as possible so they don't have time to develop into a reoccurring issue, which could have very, very, very big impacts on the team's overall well-being, overall success. And no one wants to be part of a team which is just filled with stress, anxiety. So if these patterns are recognized early on, dealt with, then you can start building a better team moving forwards. I think in this podcast, it's very easy for me to start talking about all the negative parts of performance anxiety and being part of a team. But it is also really important to recognize the benefits of being part of teams. There's a large amount of benefits also to playing a team sports, and that is largely the social benefit which playing team sports gives you, because even though sometimes it can feel very stressful being part of a team because you want to, be as good as everyone else or try to keep up with everyone else, and when they're improving, you also want to be improving at the same pace, but have many social benefits. And these include just having a social circle, which are your teammates, because these people you probably wouldn't have known if you wouldn't have been playing this sport. And this gives you this social network that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And you all have this common interest, so it's so easy to make friends because you're all there for almost the same reasons. You're all going through the same things within the team, and you're all there multiple times a week together, going through the ups and downs of playing your sport, having bad days, having good days. And having social interactions is proven to boost your mental health. Playing a team sport also teaches you the value of teamwork and how to work together with other individuals towards a common goal. And being able to work together is such an important life skill that you'll carry on for the rest of your life. And that's also why it's so important to work through issues that you might be having within your team with stress, performance, so you can learn to build that teamwork with your teammates, because without teamwork, you won't be able to succeed in the way that you would want. So later on in this podcast episode, we're going to interview a soccer player and to kind of hear her point of view of how mental health works within her sport and her team, because it is different for everyone. And I play teams as a team sport myself. I've played volleyball for 5 or 6 years, and before that I also played multiple team sports. I played soccer, basketball. I can talk from my own perspective and my own experiences. When I played in my first volleyball team, it was not serious. Like half the team didn't show up to practices, and that had a huge impact on how we work together as a team. Because if not everyone is in the sport 100%, and not everyone is putting down the same amount of work, effort, sweat, blood, and tears, then it would be so hard for the overall teams to succeed. And what I mean with succeed isn't only winning the national competition, but being able to go to a competition, feel confident, work together, not have that many setbacks. And also just go to practices, have positive spirit, have positive communication with each other, because no team should include negative talk about others. It shouldn't include people talking bad about other people. It should be a positive experience, and that is an immense reason why so many people quit their sport. Because of the team, because of coaches, and therefore I want you to take with you that talking is the key to improving your own mental health and also your team. If just one person has the courage to speak up, maybe the rest will follow. And if your team can work through that, it will bring you out as a stronger team, a well-rounded team. So therefore, I really urge you to speak up. And it's so easy to say, oh, go talk. And I understand that some people maybe are more shy or maybe don't feel really comfortable. But if you speak up to one person, maybe your teammate, then the rest can follow. So when I was playing with this team, it was my first volleyball team. It was sort of like I didn't know what to expect, because when you start a new sport, it's so hard to know if you're going to like the sport, if you're not going to like the sport, if you're going to like the team. For me, luckily, I already knew everyone who played in that team, so it wasn't so much the actual teammates that was a big worry for me. It was more sort of how everyone engaged with each other and engaged with the sport, because a sport should be something which you are passionate about, enjoy. It shouldn't be something that you're forced to do in any way. And that's why it's so important to find a sport which you enjoy, because it can impact the other team. And I'm not saying that if you go and play a sport which you don't love 110%, that you should quit, because everyone has a different amount of passion for a sport. You might love the sport. So then when I switched teams to a more focused team, it really boosted my own confidence in the sport, because everyone there had the same passion for the sport which I had. And that helped me with how I felt about the sport, but also helped me improve the sport as well. So what I'm trying to get at is that it's really important to find a team which you fit into and which you feel comfortable in. And so therefore, if you're starting a new sport, or maybe you're transferring teams, I really recommend going to a few test practices for different clubs and just kind of understanding how that team works, and also if you enjoy the team and if you fit into the team. So go to 1 or 2 practices before you decide that team is the one you want to be part of, just to know sort of what the team's values are and how the team works together, because as a new person you can really see from a more of an outside perspective how the team works together and how the team practices together and sort of what the overall team is like when they're interacting with each other. Today we will be interviewing Ellen, who plays soccer and has played soccer for multiple years, and I really am thankful that she wanted to participate in this podcast episode. Would you like to elaborate more on what sport you play?
Hi, so I play football in a team called Djurgården.
Have you ever gotten injured which has led you to experience any sort of performance anxiety?
So I've never actually had any major injuries, but I've had smaller ones which have caused me to miss trainings and matches, but it has also caused me to play worse at my trainings and matches, which have caused me performance anxiety. As football is a team sport, not being able to play your best has an effect on others and their performance, which has caused me performance anxiety. I felt as if when my team has been playing badly and I haven't been feeling good about my performance, that it's been my fault, which have caused me a lot of performance anxiety. The thing that has caused me a greater performance anxiety is when there has been times when I've missed trainings for long periods of time due to a lack of motivation, and coming back after being gone for a long period of time, knowing that your teammates have been training, feeling like you can't play good enough for them because they've been training so much more than you. And because football is a team sport where everyone is dependent on each other in the team and everyone has to work together as a team, knowing that you won't be able to play good enough for your teammates causes a lot of performance anxiety.
Do you believe that because soccer is a team sport, some of the performance anxiety and pressure to succeed is taken away because you have your teammates to rely on?
So I've never actually competed in an individual sport, so I don't really have anything to compare football to. But I do think that just because football is a team sport, the amount of performance anxiety is not necessarily reduced. I think that there's a negative and positive aspect in regards to performance anxiety to having team members. I feel as the positive ones are probably that you have someone to rely on, people that can help you out, and people to blame for your mistakes. But so you always have those other team members that can cheer you on and kind of get rid of the performance anxiety. But I feel like the negative aspect is quite big, and that is that you kind of feel like you have to perform well for your team and not just for yourself. And if you are playing worse than the rest of your team, you kind of put the blame on why your team is not performing well on yourself, which causes performance anxiety. So you're basically comparing yourself to the rest of your team. I do not necessarily think that just because it's a team sport, performance anxiety is reduced.
What is your favorite and least favorite thing about playing soccer?
Okay, so this is a really hard question for me to answer, and I can't really think of most of the answers right now, but I'll try my best. So the reasons I like playing football is I like running, and running is a big part of football. I like that it's a team sport. You get to meet a lot of new people. I like the way we compete here in Stockholm, especially that there are so many teams here, so you kind of get to experience the city by playing against all these teams in different places, inside and outside of the city. And I like that it's a big and a global sport. You're kind of part of something bigger. It's easy to relate to other people through talking about football, playing football, relating with people around the world. And I also like that you can kind of turn on a TV anywhere in the world and there is most likely a football match on. So and on to the negative aspects. So one thing that I don't like is the competitiveness of the sport. I don't like that so much pressure is put on young players, of course. And I know some people like that, but I'm not a fan. Another thing is that football is an outdoor sport, and when you're in a cold climate like Sweden, playing outside is not always great, especially with snow. And another thing is the gender inequality in the sport, especially at a professional level. I know that it is like this in a lot of sports, but it is something that has to change.
Thank you so much for wanting to be a part of this podcast. I hope this gives you a well-rounded view into team sports, both from my own perspective and also from hers perspectives, because everyone has different experiences and it's also a little bit different in every sport. This week, I would like to reference a global helpline called Supporting Bounce. Like normal, it will be linked in the description. This website finds local sports psychologists, mental performance consultants, as well as counselors all throughout the world. The simple steps are just to write in your postal code, as well as a keyword, for example, counselor, and you'll find you a range of professionals in that field close to you. This is an extremely helpful tool if you would like to receive additional professional help. So thank you for tuning into this episode of Performance Anxiety Dialogue. Next time we will talk about how performance anxiety is present in individual sports as well, because it's apparent there too. It's not just in team sports. I'll be interviewing athletes who play individual sports as well, such as tennis, to hear about their experience playing a sport where you don't have the same support system around you like a team does. So I hope you tune in next time. I'll see you then.